The yeah, yes, yes, yes. The whole willful ignorance thing you said as well. It's usually, oh, I'm not a computer person. Okay, so you're just not gonna try because you're not a computer person.
Yeah. It is the 21st century by a while now. Like, I think that excuse has flown the coop,
You're gonna have to be a computer person, just a little
right?
bit.
Like, imagine in this day and age, I told you, it's just like, oh, I'm just not a car person. I don't know how to drive, because I'm
They
not a
just call
car
you
Well,
a
that would
hippie
work if you
European.
were in a socialist country like him.
Yep,
right?
I don't have a driver's license.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a surprise of no one. So what happens if we all meet up one day and finally go out and we all get hammered and you're the only one who can drive?
Uber.
I mean,
You really think he's not going to drink from his countries?
Yeah, I've seen movies about this.
gears, I mean, I don't really know the rules of the road that well, but I mean, with an automatic gear, how hard can it be? Press this
Yeah,
button.
no, that's exactly what they. It's automatic.
You just
How hard
gotta-
could it be? I just got to keep doing that, and eventually we get home.
Right? I've
Did you learn
watched
from bumper
Seinfeld. They
cars?
all drive like this, like.
I mean, I wish I had a car that I could drive like a bumper car because I would
Oh,
be
that-
knocking people left
So
and right.
your
off the
driver's
road.
licenses are essentially free, right?
No,
No.
How much does it cost?
Well, it's so I think what you're getting hung up on is the driver's ed portion, which in some European countries and like Germany is like hundreds of dollars, right? If not thousands of dollars or
Well, I'm
something.
from Denmark.
But like,
are you sure?
yeah, no, I know, but I'm just saying I don't know what it's like in Denmark, but I know in Germany
It's
they
like
pretty penny.
$1,500 to get a driver's license ish.
Yeah,
What?
it's
Right.
not that much.
But that's the training. That's not just the license, right?
Yeah, the
That's
license is like
training.
$100 every
Yes.
10 years or something.
Right.
That's
to
a
renew
train,
it.
and then you have to pay for the license stuff after that. Just the
Right.
train is for $1,500.
Sure. So yeah, for us, like, I mean, it's in high school, right? So, depending on your school and whatever, like you might have had to pay a couple $100s for like, an insurance or something like that. Or whatever the fees are. But yeah.
Well, yeah, whatever the
That's not
driver's
this
ed
show,
class
though.
was, it was, and then you got your license a year early, so the trade-off was worth it, obviously,
Right. Yeah.
assuming you passed.
That is a big
Which-
assumption.
It's a really
yes.
low bar here, if you hadn't noticed. Like so
So, welcome to the
So-
Dresden Files podcast.
Yeah.
second guesses. We're up to
Second
like
guessing
fourth
driving.
now?
This is
Fifth
part 4, right?
guesses.
3, 4, I don't know. I'll fix the numbers.
I
later.
don't know.
I don't remember.
I know.
I was having
Checks
issues.
notes.
this
The
week.
title should be "What If."
Okay.
Didn't we do
You-
that?
That's what I made the thumbnails. At least I took the Marvel one and they crossed out Marvel, like obviously.
It's
and then-
not. It's not too wrong. We're just gonna.
That's not
What is
too
it?
wrong.
Backseat quarterback. Everything that Harry's ever done in his entire life, focusing on Harry, which limits us a little bit because a lot of changes isn't Harry. That's a lot of everyone else making decisions for him.
Susan made a decision.
There's-
for him.
there's a grid,
really
for sure.
mature adult decision.
Yes.
Shut up.
Back in several years ago, several books ago, Susan made a decision, and now she's making another decision of asking for help.
That was
When
another
Maggie's-
decision we didn't talk about in Death Mass. Don't tie up Susan and have kinky fun sex.
Right.
But and now we're here.
So again, I think we're trying to limit these to like decisions that Harry would reasonably be expected to make. And I mean, yeah. I think I speak for
No,
several
because
of us.
otherwise there's no big change. It's like, again, he would reasonably never leave Susan to the vampires, but if that's what's
Right.
going to be the big change. So in this one, I mean, listen, he got pregnant. That's a pretty big thing not to do. Especially since he never gets laid, so he doesn't know how to pull out, apparently.
Yeah, I'm just trying to limit it to the fact that it's like, I mean, if Harry was an ice mage in the first place instead of a fire mage, then it's like at some
He could
point
have been the
we're
Summer Knight.
Yeah, at some point we're rewriting his DNA. We're not just like going into a decision. Be like, if Harry had just been gay, none of this would have happened. Well, sure, but that's
Not true. He would have
we
hooked up with
thought.
Marcone a lot sooner.
Yeah. So, but Marcone wouldn't have gotten pregnant. Importantly, that's what
Well,
First of all,
considering
pregnancy.
Harry has become pregnant.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't know
Special
that.
circumstances. So
Well,
okay, Marcone wouldn't be
has a-
pregnant with Harry's baby. How about that?
because of Namshiel, something right? Because there's an angel living in Mark Cohen's brain now that there was an angel living in Harry's brain.
So there's still time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy, this. All right. Yes, this. All right. So one of the first decisions I would say that Harry does and changes is, I think still think it's inconsequential, but he goes into the office building as they're trying to find information about what Ariana is doing and anything like that. He's like, but it can't be that office building. That's my office building. Yeah, remember when they bought it out and they did a bunch of stuff and but they said it was for asbestos, and that's when
jacked up his rent.
Yeah.
Those sons of bitches.
That morning, he started kind of like losing it a little bit. That's when he did the Tower of Pratchett and started burning things down. But I don't think he is the reason that the building burnt down. I think they rigged it to blow.
And well, yeah, there were bombs.
They put bombs around his office.
It's kind of
not... still one of the first decisions he actually makes after like spilling everything to Mac, but it's inconsequential because someone else made the decision for him as to burning the building down.
No, I mean,
again, this is Harry.
Decision here. He says words, multiple of them.
Yes.
Right.
No, the biggest decisions, like we talked about, are things like deciding to go save the Willoughbys. Is it?
Mrs. Willoughby.
Right.
Mr. was long dead.
And climbing that ladder and then getting his back broken. And then as a result of that, calling up, doing all the things, doing the Uriel, doing what we eventually
Dark
find
powers.
out is the killing himself, setting himself up for suicide, and then taking Mab's offer as opposed to other powers.
Right.
And then stuff like killing Susan at the end, or forcing her, well, not forcing her, but making it so she makes a particular choice that then he uses to kill all the Red Court.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he doesn't force her, but again, he knew exactly what was going to happen. That's like, yeah.
Well, I mean, Uriel would say that it's a fair ball, I assume, because it's the same. It's not the same as, an angel whispering in your ear. It's a friend.
Yeah. So I suppose to take the bigger one first off, because it'll take the most amount of time, is like when he has a broken back, Jim has laid out basically 3 options. He can go with Matt, he can go with Lashiel's coin, or he could do the Dark Hollow. And he chose Matt because, as you said, like she is the least evil of the options. But it's because, I mean, if he had done the Dark Hollow, then all his friends would be dead, which could have been fun.
Well, that's the thing. The thing with the Dark Hollow has always been, it's like, yes, theoretically it's an option, but did he really have the time for it without, for example, knowing what's down in Demon Reach? So he's got to do the Dark Hollow in such a way that either he's doing it in the middle of Chichen Itza, in which case fucking everything's trying to kill him anyway, and that's not really going to help you. Or, I mean, he doesn't have the prep time to do it in the way that took days, weeks, even for all those Kemlerites to set that shit up.
Yeah.
We always talk about that, right? But the line that sticks to me is like, doesn't Cal take a look at it for like 30 seconds to be like, yes, it's so simple, and they just literally didn't have the final puzzle piece. But the other part of it is like, he's not going to come out a demigod, not nearly as powerful, just because he's not going to get the Wild Hunt, right?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's on Halloween with the threshold being all weekend. So what's he gobbling up?
Right.
Basically just people. I mean,
what if he did it on the island?
Well, that's the thing. He doesn't know what's there yet. So he's basically just would do that on the island, I guess, under the assumption that he's swallowing up Alfred and whatever, some maybe ley line magic.
Right. Which, I mean, he'd basically become a new great old one, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, because he wouldn't know what's down there. And as he's doing it, honestly, if he did it then without knowing what was down there, it'd probably just blow him up. Because he wouldn't have been prepared for that.
Doctor Strange from What If, basically that one, if you've seen it, where he absorbs and like he can't control it and stuff.
Yeah.
So he would just blow up the upper half of the country. It would just happen earlier. So the logical options are Mab and the coin at that point.
Right.
I kind of like the coin, actually.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, unironically, right, in something that the author would do, right, he probably wasn't prepared for Dresden to just become a demigod, right? So sure, I guess I could see a timeline where, you know, he offs all of his friends in most of Chicago and whatever, and then, you know, becomes stupidly powerful, but not necessarily like, you know, he's going to start knocking down the walls of Edinburgh or something like that, you know? So...
Well, I mean, at that
what
point, you basically have to fast forward to Battleground, right? Because that's really the only thing where he could reasonably be in the same weight class, and the story still has stakes. Because,
Sure.
I mean, Cold Days, the lady has essentially become far less of a problem for him if he's fucking at Mab's level, and Skin Game
Yeah.
is nothing to him at that point. You know, that kind of stuff is just, and he also, I mean, so is he wouldn't even really be able to kill himself at that point. Like, what's Kate's going to shoot him? That's not going to do anything.
No, yeah, I mean the shooting him, I think, is directly related to Mab and maybe the coin, but like it probably wouldn't have even worked with the coin because at that point Lashiel's going to be in the seat with him, you know. So you know, you think she's not going to just like reflexively pull a shield,
But
like even
he could
just
give up the
one
coin
thing,
again.
you know.
Like it, he took away the memory of the fact that Kincaid was going to kill him, but he could
Well,
give up the coin and then Kincaid could kill it, or maybe he doesn't need to die.
And that's also like there's a non-zero amount of that is Lashiel pushing that button on him too, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like the Kincaid bit is almost glued to the Mab outcome. You know, I don't think it would have been a thing one way or another for Lashiel. I think with Lashiel, like the more interesting questions to me are, how does the training montage go from there, right? Does he run off into the wilderness and get a bunch of training from Lashiel directly, or does she try to fold him in with Nicodemus? Because, like, sure, she's working with Nicodemus, but she's not exactly toeing the line, if that makes sense either.
It's kind of an independent, right?
Right. She's more independent. She's not quite 100% like rogue or anything like that, but at the same time, you know, she's not exactly the company's man, so to speak, either. You know,
I think he probably, even if Nicodemus doesn't help him directly in this book, he probably gets someone like a Namshield type and maybe a few others, because he made the offer in small favors. Like, listen, the Red Court needs to be gotten rid of. They're stupid and dangerous, so I'm happy to help you do that if you play ball.
Right.
So,
and the Red Court was working with outsiders,
right, which is, you know,
if we follow that, you know, favorite headcanon. So
even if Nicodemus himself isn't personally there, I'm sure he probably gets a you know, because in the same way Leo was there representing Winter, I'm sure he gets a small cohort of Denarians.
Right. So we've got evil A team, right? So Harry Dresden's going to lead, you know, like Thornton Namshiel, Magog, you know, who else do we got, right? Because it's like he's going to have, you know, Ursiel. Yeah. So he's going to have his 2 or 3 bruisers, and then he's going to have his, you know, he's still got to have his Gandalf, right? He's still got his Leah in Thornton Namshiel, maybe. And it's not like Lashiel's a slouch, right? She's one of the 2 or 3, you know, main casters, I think, of the group. You know, that
it's reasonable, like, that
I would say she's number 1, even before Harry at that point.
Well, I mean, but over a Thorn and Namshiel, that's what I'm saying. So,
well, the other thing is he's with Marcone at this point, so he's probably not.
That's fair. Indisposed.
Yeah. So it's probably your Magogs and your Ursiel types where you just got these big bruisers that are going to run things that could take on the Ick, you know, stuff like that. And you know, obviously Harry, Lashiel, but then you're not going to have the swords around, right? They're not going to team. You know, Sonya's not coming.
Right. No, I expect none of the Scoobies would come if.
But Sonya would already be there. So if we're taking, like, he makes a decision at the point that his broken back is already broken. Sonya was there to pull him out of the fire. Sonya's already there.
Right, but I don't think he then goes with, you know, a bunch of Denarians to Chichen Itza.
I don't know. That would be really interesting, wouldn't it? Because he gave the sword to Murphy, and then Murphy did all of her weird, crazy shit at Chichen Itza. But, like, we don't fully know that the swords wouldn't be there with Denarians to help someone. Michael was working with Nicodemus in Skin Game for not saving a child to be murdered. Like, it's possible.
I mean, I guess you could open the door that if the story goes a slightly different way, or even if this is what's going to come at some point, is the idea of the angels and the fallen angels starting on this general path of maybe not reconciliation, but if they got the same enemy, but they're fighting for different reasons, that's going to intertwine. But then again, once he picks up the coin, he loses his soulfire, he gets his hellfire back. So I don't know that he's really going to be.
Will he lose his soulfire?
He would. Yeah.
I feel like it's a safe assumption, but it's also an assumption. So.
No, it's also a wordage, if that helps.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
We'll take that. I mean, the biggest reason why it's not denarians in this book is because it's not a denarian numbered book. But
I mean, sure, but that's.
Are you saying it's not what
out of universe?
Correct.
I think so. Literally, the point of changes was that he broke several of his own rules like that, right? So, I would argue the fact that he broke the title rule, he could break the denarian rule. So it's just a little convenient that it worked out that it was divisible by what is it, 3 or 4? It's 4, right, for the fairies where they seem to show up. So that was that. I think that was convenient, but I don't think that played into it. So 3 was the vampires, 4 was the fae.
Yeah.
Which, granted, the denarians would be in all of them if he took the coins, so that was going to break it, one of those things.
Right.
And
yeah, to me, it very much would have more encapsulated changes and catapulting him into a different weight class if he had done the Dark Hollow, right? Because we would have literally burned and salted the earth at that point, and he'd have to have a whole new cohort of supernatural help. Is Mavra running around? Is she the one that's like, oh, welcome to being a necromancer, I'm going to be your tutor now, or whatever? Because just because he's got all this power, right? Just because he's got all this power doesn't mean he necessarily knows how to use it either. So he's still got somebody who's going to have to, lean on him. Does it affect his relationship with Vaterung? Vaterung thinks he's generally a good guy. I feel like the Dark Hallow would push him a little far. It's like you've clearly eaten thousands, possibly tens of thousands, or maybe even millions of innocent lives at that point.
Right, but what if he puts it all back? And if he has access to Soulfire, just like the Einherjar can be resurrected, what if he did the similar thing?
I think that's a different book series you're pulling from. I think, yeah,
I think that's supernatural.
Dresden's the immortal king now, the god emperor. So, yeah, something tells me once that's out of the bottle, you don't just get to put it back, and certainly not in the Dresden files.
Well, it seems just like Vaterung may have done something similar. I mean, whether he's done any form of a Dark Hollow is less the question. But he has souls, he puts them back into bodies and binds them there to the point that they are resurrected. They don't need a drum. They're literally alive again. And this is technically possible in the Dresden verse. Therefore, it's just the question of, can Dresden ask the questions enough to be able to figure out how to do such a thing? But he would have the tools available to do it.
And those are also human souls versus whatever. I mean, those things in Demon Reach, by and large, if not all 100%, they're not really souls. They're just going to be.
So maybe he keeps all of Demon Reach, but he puts all of the Chicago people back.
Okay.
Just Chicago.
He's just going to go stand up those little tin soldiers again,
Yes.
Well, I tend to think you could probably just do the Dark Owl on Demon Reach, especially now, with his knowledge of the defenses, you could make a big circle and just contain all that shit there. And without it spreading out to Chicago, if that was ever a necessary option. But
yeah. So I think it's also important to know that it's very well established that for mortals anyways, this is one of those power corrupts, and how you get the power is just as important as having the power in the first place. There's basically a 0% chance that Harry makes the decision, yes, I would like to eat a bunch of mortal souls, please, and then afterwards gets to put them back like he just knocked some books off a shelf. There's that's why I'm saying burned and salted the earth. If Harry had taken the Dark Hollow, it's an entirely different and darker book series. Is he still going to be angsty like Thomas? Maybe, probably, because that seems to be one of the themes that we like to go back to the well on. But
yes, he will be angsty like Thomas, because that's the author's style and it's what he would do.
Right. but does it fix anything? Like he can go cry about, eating Molly and Lucio and Murphy and Thomas and even that guy, the medic guy that I can't remember his name, and
Lamar.
that's gonna no, I'm pretending to be Harry, but yes, Lamar and all of the other cops that he was friends with, but he fucking ate them. They're not coming back. Like that's to me that's a non-starter for that path, right? So I think if he was going to keep a toe in the mortal realm, it would have had to have been Mab or Lashiel, easily. So, but anyway, I'm good. That was a lot.
I mean, those are the two power sets that also essentially require him to remain mortal, right? The knights need to be mortal, and the coins need the free will of mortals. So
Sure.
Once you start gobbling up dark god power, that's another. Like he can't even set aside the mantle without some sort of probably weird ass bunch of hoops to drop through, and he turns into a demigod. He's stuck with that,
right?
Until or unless Halloween comes around, and maybe he can,
right. If he's not stuck with it, casting it off is probably complete, like giving up the coin is supposed to be, right? Michael's like, if you forsake your power, then sure, you can give up the coin, whatever. If he could even get rid of the Dark Hallow mantle, whatever that becomes, it would be complete, I think. I don't think there's a in between, where it's just like, oh yeah, cool, I'll just shave the top 90% off of my power now. That's not really going to be a thing. So,
because he's not Bob, he can't just trim bits off himself.
Stupid mortals.
I was gonna say he probably would. That would probably be his advisor. That would Evil Bob, right? Like he would seek that guy out. And...
Nice.
You
knew Kemmler. Teach me. Honestly, he'd probably just eat him. Like I don't see why not. It'd be less entertaining from a narrative perspective, I guess, but it would make all the sense in the world that he would consume him. Maybe he could tap into things that he's eaten, so he can go into a meditative state and tap into Evil Bob that way or something. But I don't see him sitting down with a spirit. That it's like, I eat spirits. That's how I get power. Let's have a conversation, So.
Well, there's also still one growing in his head at that point. So.
True.
Maybe he taps into that a little quicker. It's like, hey, the fuck is going on up there? I'm not supposed to have thoughts anymore. This is nonsense.
Or she gets eaten too, because again, spirit. So.
It does make me wonder, if he took up Lashiel's coin, what would happen to Bonnie in her natal state?
I imagine she would start getting both parents in her head taking care of her.
Or, it kind of depends on how Lashiel perceives that, right? So we could have a premature end to that too, I could imagine. So,
well, she seemed to be fine with the idea of taking the kid right out of his head, and I don't think she was going to absorb her. I think she was just going to raise her, in Skin Game. This was like, that's our kid. She's going to be useful to me. Gimme.
Gotcha. Okay. I did.
And so then he would have his, he would have his id up there plus Lashiel, like playing parents, which would probably be awkward. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it sounded very crowded.
Yeah,
well, that's the other thing. Lashiel would probably not need Molly, quote unquote, to then tend to that. Like I feel like Lashiel would probably be able to handle that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So Mab is not only the less evil options in various reasons. It might be the only option, for both out of style and numbering choices and reasons that would just be too much to do right then. He has to build up to doing demigod stuff.
Not the only reason, but you start to get a lot more variance in the multiverse, like those are all choices, so they're all plausible paths, but quite a bit changes,
It would yes, it would change. It would decidedly change the tone of the rest of the books and making things fairies. I mean, that's the storyline that we know.
Right.
But also seems much more true to the Dresden tone, because if he became a Denarian, then everything is demons and angels and hells and all sorts of stuff.
Well, he would probably have to make a lot more questionable choices than he has to. Like, with the stuff with Mab, he might be squeamish about some of it and her mentality towards things, but she still hasn't actually said to him, hey, go kill that baby over there, right? And she's probably not ever going to. However, someone like Nicodemus, who has no qualms about any of this shit, you know, like getting the information about the underworld. I mean, sure, Mab and all of them wanted to set him up for that, but what did he actually have to do to obtain that information? You think it was nice? No.
Right.
And I tend to imagine he's going to be in much more morally dubious situations with the Denarians than even with Mab.
So yes, right, but I don't know if it strays as far as you guys seem to be implying in some ways, right? Because like, I mean, he's still more or less his own person, and with
Yes, I don't
Lashiel's,
think he's forced to work with Nicodemus or any of the other Denarians.
and well, and I'm still not going that far either. But it's like Lashiel still kind of being like a rebel angel among, you know, rebel angels in a way, right? She's again not just going to toe the line. However, I think Nicodemus is still going to be, he's going to be there for the initial few books. He's going to have the tenuous kind of relationship and leadership as Mab has so far, right? Like, you know, Mab took direct control of him in the beginning of Cold Days, obviously, because she rehabilitated him, but he doesn't need that necessarily if he goes with Lashiel. Maybe he does, but not necessarily. But either way, like I could easily see they bring in the Denarians. You know, maybe Nicodemus goes with them for a bit of fun. Maybe he's going to be the Leah character, where it's like, oh, I'm going to indulge myself. I haven't had this much fun in 2,000 years or whatever. But you know, Skin Game could all but be the same, right?
Yeah, which actually sounds really interesting.
Yeah, like, I mean, Nicodemus is like, hey, I got this job and you should come with me. And Nicodemus is still not, he's not telling Harry, like, oh, hey, you know, I'm going after the Grail or whatever. And you could still have the double cross. Harry's got to have a different ally, you know, towards the end of it. Maybe Goodman Gray is directly involved at that point or whatever. But like,
Harry isn't the Winter Knight, he still owes a favor to Mab.
sure.
So by the time that Skin Game comes around, he might still owe a favor to Mab and be having to get onto the same job as Nicodemus for other reasons. And she could say, you have to make sure he doesn't get this, and then blah, blah, blah.
I think there's a pretty big event that she's going to call the favor in prior to that, which is kill my daughter. I don't think he gets past Cold Days without that third favor being used.
You might be able to arrange Cold Days in a way of like someone telling him that his island is in trouble and he has to figure out how to save it, and Maeve still ends up dead without her using an order or a favor on that.
Well, I guess the way to bring it in then at that point is probably because someone like Molly's going to probably be the Winter Knight then, and
or Thomas,
since she's a
right.
I honestly at that point I think it's going to be Molly based on the way Ghost Story was going. I think it's just easier.
Well, It could be that Molly still might need to be saved for the Winter Lady.
Sure.
Yeah. With just to rewind a little bit, so with Cold Days, Mab doesn't necessarily have to use a favor, because if she knows that he's the warden, all she has to do is like have somebody flitter by with a pamphlet and be like, oh, by the way, somebody's going to attack Demon Reach,
which
and
Molly
then he's obligated to go, you know.
Yeah.
So like,
I suppose.
Yeah.
It's like it's a different route to get to the same endpoint with Cold Days, but and like similar with Skin Game, but like those two could be almost the same, because these aren't about Harry's choices; these are about other people's choices being made for him.
No, I think the way to make it slightly darker with the Denarians is he's going to be getting all this info about the gates and the nature of Nemesis and all this stuff from a much more biased viewpoint, I would say, than even someone like Mab is. Because even Mab is the defender of reality, whose job it is to just fight these things. But
So
these
it's
angels,
Nicodemus,
in
though.
theory, rebelled based on all of this. It's like, hold on, you see all this shit that's going on up there that they're not taking care of?
But the difference is Nicodemus is, so my headcanon, right? I'm going to open this up. This is all my biases, and some of this is conjecture, and some of this is my stake and what I predict is happening and is going to happen. Nicodemus is team reality too. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not real hard for Nicodemus to take Harry to the gates and be like, see that Shoggoth gobbling all those people up? Do you want that to be Chicago? And be
Might
like,
be.
oh yeah, we better fucking do whatever it takes to stop it. Oh, whatever it takes, huh? Fun fact, free will is the problem.
Gotta get rid of
It's
it.
not, yeah, it's not the Fae that are the problem. It's not even, most of God's creation. It's humanity. Humanity's the problem. Nicodemus is totally team reality. He's not team humanity.
Right.
Earth will truck on just fine being a wasteland, whether it's nuclear wasteland or it's overgrown with jungles and shit because all humanity died off in a plague. That's what Nicodemus wants, right? So he's absolutely team reality. He's team all those trillions and trillions of other planets that for some reason it's this one that matters. That's probably the part where it's like, like if you think about it, like in scope, it's insanity, right? It's to our perspective anyway. So you can kind of understand how somebody like for a Nicodemus, for not even Nicodemus, but like Endurial, right? Endurial, Lashiel, Magog, all of those guys, like, it's literally insanity that all of reality could become unraveled because there's a few million at the time apes that decided that they got free will or whatever, and that's all part of the ineffable plan. Hell yeah, it is. Nobody fucking understands that shit. Why does that make sense?
Mhm.
So, like, you've got trillions of galaxies and trillions of suns and trillions of planets and all of this shit, and it all comes down to whether or not this asshole's a good guy. What? Because that's what it's going to come down to at the end of the day with the Dresden Files. The only surprise there is that there weren't more than 30. Of course there might have been, right? This is just like one group,
Yeah, a few of them
obviously
probably died.
Lucy wasn't part of the 30 and whatever. So however else the other, you had Legion, with the thousands and whatever. So yeah, like to me, when you kind of put it in the Dresden verse context, especially, and you take, the fallen angels, it just makes sense that a chunk of them would have rebelled, because surprise, it's religion and it's angels. What this came down to was faith, right? You either got faith in the ineffable plan or you applied some logic to it and you fell, because that's probably what it came down to, right? Uriel keeps the faith. He absolutely yes, it sounds crazy, but I trust in his plan. That's the point. That's what we do. That's where we're angels. Whereas, like, for the Denarians and other fallen, they were like, oh, hell no. What? That's crazy. We're going to trust these apes. That it's a coin toss. He doesn't know.
Literally.
He doesn't know the stakes. How could he possibly make the right decision? So we're going to trust all of reality and the eternal war of the outsiders that we fucking had to cast these guys out in the first place. We're going to trust that to a coin toss. So of course they fell. What other choice did they have?
Yep.
So it just,
And even
I don't know.
Even the fence sitters were like, were just like, makes kind of sense. I don't know, but I mean, God is God and stuff. It's like, out.
Yeah, it's like, get out. Like, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Yeah. If you're not with me, you're against me. So
No. Fuck that.
Yeah.
I was trying to make an informed decision.
Right. We just
Not
wanted to
allowed.
wait a few millennia and then pick a side.
No faith.
So.
Please get out.
Right. Well, I mean, because and maybe it's not, whatever. Like, but to me, that makes all the sense in the world. Is like, it's all about faith, right? It's all about keeping the faith. It's the deal with the graces. It's deal with everything like that. It's as long as you have faith and you believe, then we're chilling. Anything else, then you're working against me, at least for the angels' sake. And because a big part of it, like depending on the different religions that you've got, is like parts of it is that the angels do know better, right? They do know. they have seen it in action. They've been there since the beginning. They've been created for these tasks and whatever. There isn't really any doubt. And so, for some different myths, if we wanted to bring that in, the angels fell because they actively are working against the plan, and that sort of thing. But if you, and that's where I get lost in the whole like free will and choice thing, especially when it comes to angels, because it's like they have it. Uriel has made choices, like not even just like on how he executes it, but giving his grace to Michael is a choice. Like how is that not free will? Like maybe he doesn't wake up and decide he's going to have eggs and toast versus pancakes and bacon. Maybe it's not that level of free will, but
I mean, his description in Skin Game was really on the line of like he could not make the decision for Michael. He could help Michael do what he already decided to do, which was walk out that gate. And so
by that logic, it's like I could have helped Harry do what he wanted to do, which was walk off that bed.
Yeah,
right.
You could have given your grace to him, theoretically. I mean, that would have been hilarious, but
yeah. The difference is Uriel knows that if he gave his grace to Harry, he would absolutely fall. So because he was still concerned with Michael, but we all knew that Michael was good enough to handle it. But like, yeah, but. Like even just going to the initial decision point, which is choosing whether or not to fall, by rebelling, by sitting on a fence, those are choices. So they clearly have free will of some kind. That's
Uriel cannot give the grace to Harry because Harry would just be a smartass to God and then he would fall. Right. He couldn't help himself of just like he can't accept any authority. Anytime someone tries to say, you will do this thing, he gets his head bounced around an elevator. It's just,
I want to believe if he had a one-on-one with literally God, he might tone it down a little bit. Or I'm also a fan of the understanding that it's like if God was personally involved with making each and every one of us, or he knows better, like he'd be like, look, I know you can't help it, but chill out for a minute. So like I'm trying to tell you something important here, Right.
So one thing that I found interesting in sitting and thinking about all this, if Harry took up Lashiel's coin and Kincaid still managed to kill him, because Kincaid has killed Denarians, as we saw in Small Favor, or sort of kill Harry. Yeah. Well, yeah, but the ghost story, it could still happen, and he could still be running around in his soul with Uriel and seeing all of the effects of whatever's going on. I don't know how you'd get him to do the whole wake up thing again if Mab isn't keeping him alive. Maybe Mab is keeping him alive.
Unless she really wants that third favor.
Right. I want my $2.
I mean, it's a lot to commit, but at the same time, it's like she's committing a lot to a knight that she never would have committed to before anyway, because he is who he is and a Starborn and yada, and worth the trouble.
Right.
So having that third favor is still probably worth the trouble to her.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I could definitely see that with all of the other stuff that has to happen.
Plus, it was Bonnie keeping his blood alive, so Lashiel is probably up there now like, fucking dumbass.
Right. But wouldn't the juxtaposition just be so interesting if Lashiel or someone was keeping him alive, that now Uriel is running around with Harry as a ghost soul person?
Well, that would probably be the book where it's like, so that whole book was his lesson about how Mab can't change who you are. So it would still follow, except Uriel would probably be, or, that the theme would be more like you could give this up at any time. You have that ability. And at the end, he's going to be like, no, I'm going to work with you, but you're not going to change me. And same thing.
Sure. Yeah, again, I think it's kind of fun how, like, certainly going Denarian makes the books take several steps darker, but maybe not as far afield. It's certainly a parallel universe rather than just like a somewhat distant one, like the Dark Hollow would be. Like the Dark Hollow is like a geographic change as much as for Harry as it is for the world, whereas like him picking up the Denarian is like, we've got somewhat lightish red or pink with Mab, and then we've got like the dark reds of whatever. It's like, yeah, it's along the same lines, just a little further to the evil side. you know. But yeah. Yeah, because Uriel could be running around with his ghost, and like Lashiel could be none the wiser, right? Lashiel's just trying to keep him on life support because, like, damn it, I just got a host.
Well, yeah, I mean, she'd be busy. She's like, not again.
Right? You know, yeah, and Uriel could still be absolutely trying to save the soul, right? You know, so.
And I mean, let's face it, it's not. I mean, apparently, she could still be. I mean, if Bonnie was able to stick around even though he was dead, quote unquote. So the biological aspect of it is she could probably hang out in his head and do what she has to do. You know, keep the blood flowing, which is what Bonnie was doing. And all that other good stuff.
Yeah. But again, I wonder if Bonnie's still up there and Lashiel's up there, maybe it's easier if both of them are working together.
Well, it also opens up the possibility of if Harry's being obstinate later on, she could be like, well, our kid is going to blow your head open, so maybe you should go help Nicodemus raid the underworld. It's like, wait, what?
Lashiel can do the same thing that Mab threatened to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's options there, so.
Yeah. All right. The bigger decision, as we've talked about this one for 40 minutes ish.
Is that not enough for you? Would you like to?
No. So
we could go on.
Yes, we could. At Chichen Itza, the whole thing with Susan, there's a couple other ways you could have handled it, probably, of managing to still wipe out the entire Red Court, or at least just getting him and his people out alive, perhaps. I mean, the biggest one that I see is instead of having Susan on the slab to die, he could have managed maybe to get Martin to turn and be the youngest and then kill him, but that would leave him less guilty.
Well, I mean, the big choice overall is, I mean, people will say it's Susan because wah wah, but in general, it's the idea of the fact that he wiped out an entire powerhouse nation, and then what happened as a result of that. The Fomor coming in basically immediately, all that other stuff, and how that changed the landscape and opens up the door to Battleground and all that stuff.
There's even still the dreams that happened because of that. That is largely. I don't think that's got something to do with the Fomorians. That's an unresolved plot point still.
Yeah, it was just a matter of all this giant magical energy spread out around the world, and everyone had bad dreams, especially pregnant women, for like a night or three. It was like this echoing aftershock of big magic power.
Is that the word of doom? Because I thought it implied something.
Oh, it's in the book.
Bigger.
No, that's what it's described as. You know, the night of bad dreams is what they call it, right?
I know, but I thought I didn't know that it was explained that it was just because of a big magical energy. I thought I heck don't remember that being in the books. I thought it was something more that we were going to find out later down the road.
No, not that.
No, I'm pretty sure it says explicitly the use of that spell is what rippled out and did that.
So before I get too deep into it, one of the questions I have is like, I don't remember when the curse went off, right? We already know that the Red Court had basically, like Martin especially, had already given a kill order to wipe out the Fellowship of St. Giles, right? But did the curse kill? Yeah, did the curse wipe out just the vampire part, or does it kill the half vampires anyway? Because
but all the ones who were. I think Hannah Asher.
Yeah, Hannah Asher said all the ones that were too old already. They died because
rapidly.
Yeah. Like Martin had been 200 years old as a half vampire, and so as soon as the vampire part is gone, time is going to take its toll.
Right. The reason I was asking though is because if it's Martin on the altar instead of Susan, if she dies anyways, it's academic, right?
Right, but she's only been a vampire for 8 years, so
she's still in her 30s. She'd be fine. Quote unquote.
That's why I was asking is because if there's no stakes, it's not really worth. Yeah, it's not really worth arguing about. But if she would have survived, then it makes a lot of sense. I don't know how he would have turned her though. And,
I think that the big stake is whether or not the Red Court are gone. It's a matter of then Susan probably goes off, takes Maggie, and they go hide in a corner because he's a Denarian now, and he's not going to want to influence any of them.
Yeah, that's possible.
Well, if we're chaining those things, but if we assume he's the Winter Knight up to this point, and he somehow gets Martin to turn. Like the difference there though is there's only 3 people on the altar at that point, right? Or 4, I guess, because Maggie's there. And the point is that Susan only turned because she killed Martin. So who's Martin gonna kill so that he turns?
Got to be either Susan, Maggie, or Dresden. In which case,
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I'm getting at too. It's like, yes, I mean, fundamentally it's a decision. He would whine a lot less if he had gotten Martin to, on the altar instead, but he'd still whine because Susan died, so
Right.
it's almost academic, in a sense where it's like, if you pull this lever, Martin dies, but if you do nothing, Susan dies, and still all of the Red Court dies,
So
No,
It
it's more
happens-
like if you pull this lever, Susan dies. If you don't pull this lever, Susan dies. And,
Yeah.
but also Martin will die, which is also the same thing that happens either way. Right?
That's
She
true.
eats Martin,
It's like a
or
loop.
he sacrifices Martin.
It's a loop, but Susan and Martin are on the far end of the loop anyway. So it's just like he's over here like pulling the lever, and then they both get run over anyway. Like, what the fuck?
Wait a minute, no.
Sorry, totally crass and inappropriate, but that's why I'm saying, like, sure, it's a choice, but thinking about it, I don't think it makes any difference. So,
Right. So like I'll quibble a little bit of like Martin, since he was clearly the smartest person on that altar,
Right.
could have helped make things like that happen to a certain extent. Like if he killed Susan to then turn and then says like, okay, kill me now, and then the curse will work as he clearly intended it to, well, Justin gets to feel a little bit less angry about it, which that's why Jim will never take that option. Harry has to hate himself the whole time. But like there's the temple virgin chick, Alamaya, whatever her name was. Like she was human. She was there. She was ready to die because she was just offered up as an appetizer, and therefore go get her, kill her, then
Right.
turn, and then Susan can live. But like again, this is a little bit more logistics, not Harry's choices. The reason
Right.
that book hurts and is so much fun is because it's Harry's choice to do so, and it hurts him.
Right.
Well,
And
the
so-
biggest other problem is Martin going to have enough of himself, like, because Susan, he's able to tap into the Maggie angle, like, so Susan can retain herself long enough for him to even pull that trigger. Is Martin going to be able to, like, is I Like the Fellowship going to be enough? I doubt it.
Well,
Especially
it's not-
since
like,
he's got
it's-
this whole base of.
I hate
being
the Red
a
Court.
priest. Well, yeah, but
80?
still, I mean, it's possible. I don't
It's-
think it's necessarily as strong.
Yeah. Is it important again? Because this is one of those where it's like, yes, if the universe had taken several other branches, then maybe there's a point where, what if one of the Scoobies came with him? So what if it was Murphy was there, and then they kill Murphy and then put him on the altar? We could make the collateral damage a whole lot worse, right? But I don't think there's like a better choice, that happens in the moment. I mean, I guess it
kill
could
Molly and
remain.
put her on there.
Yeah, you could have Susan turn and it remain unfired. That would be quite a difference, that he just didn't have it in him to operate the curse after that, that seeing Susan turn was too much for him. So you've got the Red Court running around still being jackasses, and you lost Susan and you didn't get anything out of it. It could be
Or
something
one of
like
the
that,
other
but-
Denarians takes that choice from him and pulls the trigger because they had the secret mission from Nicodemus to, destroy the Red Court.
Yeah,
That's possible.
they're over there pushing a couple of magical buttons. They put Maggie on the altar and then like wipe out humanity because she's one of the youngest humans. So, functionally they've wiped out humanity because they're going to bottleneck the population at least, or whatever. But
That would be
I don't
interesting
know.
if they could
I
do
mean-
it that way. I don't think they could, but
hey, who knows, man? They're angels. So,
well, that's it. The problem, I mean, you're gonna have to
I
get
think
really
your line is
scientific.
that's not how magic works.
Well,
but-
yeah, you're gonna have to really stretch the bloodline connection of all humans, or come from a single source type thing.
Adam and Eve.
Yeah, yeah.
What are you
I know.
talking about? They all come. You
Spiritual
can't
aspect.
sit here. You can't sit here with literal fallen angels and God and tell me that Adam and Eve isn't part of the mythos. Like, even if it wasn't like Adam and Eve in a garden with a flaming sword, there's at least an Adam and Eve, like pre-human that they can tie it to. And they're angels. They've been around long enough. They know. So
That would be funny.
but everybody 8 and older, just
Yeah, I was gonna say
like, disappears off the
it'd be
planet.
like there was a book
So-
like that I read.
Yeah, I
in,
know, it sucks.
in like 5th grade. I think it was called "The Girl Who Owned a City," where it was like everyone over 12 years old in the world dies from some weird disease.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek does stuff like that, like the original series when they would do the Gonzo like sci-fi stories, and there's a few like that. Like Futurama riffs on it, I think. And they're like, no, that's just L.A. Like, so. But classics.
Isn't Futurama coming back again?
It is interesting,
it?
though.
I think so.
It's like
Uh,
Voldemort, man.
If I think we've talked about this before,
Voldemort or Futurama?
how Harry seems to not really remember the situation as it was in Changes with Susan.
Right.
No, he's got like a 2 or 3 minute window where everything blanks out.
Right, but how he remembers and how we hear the story, and then how he tells it to Michael and Skin Game are
It's some
different.
big cope.
Very different.
It's
It's
some
very,
real big cope.
it's
Yeah.
very, and usually he's pretty good about hating himself, but it's very not what happened. At least what we read in Changes, what he tells
Yeah,
Michael.
no.
Yeah, well, there's hating yourself, and then there's like literally like unzipping as a human, right? Like if Harry kept a hold of what happened, it's very possible he would have one of those mental breaks like he almost did with the with the
Nigloshi.
yeah, thank you. I was trying to say the ick for some reason. I'm like, no, that's not it. But
Well, it was
with
icky what he
Nagloshi,
saw.
but right, but like him not coming back from that, right? Like that's I do like. I don't take it as far as like Bram Stoker did in Dracula, where it's like, ooh, he's got pointy teeth and I'm going to faint and I can't handle it, right? Like, I think humans are fairly resilient, but we definitely have our limits, right? And I think that might push Harry's limits to the point where, like, yes, it probably is cope. It probably is him trying to not remember, because that's too far even for, him and Michael, at least to Harry's perspective. Michael's forgiven him for every damn thing. Like
Yeah.
Michael is like
The
all
saint
but
of
infallible.
forgiveness.
Yeah, right. Like absolutely. In Harry's case, for sure. But yeah, it just that might be one of those things that Harry can't. Now, to me, the more compelling thing is it plays with your take on the books. If the books are his literal journal, writing it down after the fact, then why do we have the version in the books? And maybe did he have Molly massage his brain afterwards to forget about it? But
Or he is just
You know,
writing
so-
it down as he said it, and he's like, I wasn't. And later on, it'll be, I wasn't ready to come to terms with what I'd done, subconsciously or some shit.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe the time travel book will have a touch on that.
Oh God, please no.
She's like, this is why I wrote things down wrong. Or there's the side comment that Leah says, if like your memory is not the only place where the truth is stored, and so it could be some other cosmic hard
Written on
drive.
his soul bits.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
the hard facts of the story as he tells it to Michael doesn't exactly change, but he ascribes much more ownership to Martin's actions.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fair, I guess. It's much more logical than he saw it in Changes, I guess, let's say, because he way overblamed himself and not realizing that he was put into position. Yeah, he does make the decision. He does go along with as Martin had set it up. But later,
Yeah, it's
he
the
sees
true but
exactly-
incomplete and uncharitable version.
Yeah. Yeah. And then even then Michael has to say, Susan understood she wasn't going into that blind.
I still think that he's very good about blaming himself too much. So this time around, I feel like he's too good at giving himself a break.
A pass.
He realizes what Martin's doing. He makes a decision, and he asks the question to Susan.
Well, it's because he
That's
makes the
also-
comment right in the aftermath, is like, and then I made a choice that, would come to haunt me for the rest of my life, or
So I
whatever he
think I
says.
can remember the line is like, God forgive me for the idea I gave birth to next because I never will.
Right. So it is what it is.
I mean, we're dancing around the real line, though. But
Yeah, of course.
anyway, so
We'll know that one.
all right. All
What?
right.
I used a
Fine.
knife. I cried about it. God help me.
Yes.
That is the line
EG's
verbatim.
version. I used the knife. I'm a little girl. I saved the world.
I used the knife and I was a bitch about it. It's not even a third line. It's just moaning noises.
Jeez.
Like, he's way more broken up about Murph, right, than he is about this, really.
Well,
I mean-
Murph's a little recent.
Yeah, I mean
So-
he's actively in love with her versus at this point where he's like he'll still always care for Susan, but I don't think he would have
Seems
ever
like
really
he's
gotten
still-
past that betrayal type deal.
Yeah, no, he never would.
So there's a
How long were the events of changes? Like 3 days, you
Yeah.
know. So
give or take.
you know, she shows up Friday morning, like, P.S. We had a kid, and he's like, I had plans, lady. Do you have any idea what this does to my schedule? And he runs around and he wipes out an entire race of vampires, and we call it a wash. And then Monday's like, fuck. Can you believe that? I haven't seen her in how many years? And she just dumps that on me versus like Murphy was like, you know, the day before, you know, they were getting busy and, you know, whatever. So
Plus, he has the consolation of knowing
relationship.
he saved his kid, right? Like Murphy dies and he doesn't even get a set of steak knives, although he should have because that was worth it.
steak knives, really? Is that the appropriate gift at this point?
All right, new blasting rod, whatever, something.
A knife holder? I mean,
Perhaps a
something.
gun.
Yes.
Wait, what? She didn't give him his
these
P90 just to be
times-
like, fuck it, take it. Here, be GoldenEye for a little while.
Oh, man.
Not that
We're
he could
terrible
use that
people.
gun.
Are you only not realizing that?
No, it bears saying at this point. So,
Okay.
like,
Yes, the John Wells podcast. We're terrible people.
yes.
Speak for yourselves. I am delightful.
I'm with EG on this one.
He's delightful.
Yes.
No, I'm delightful.
Specifically.
He's not delightful.
Specifically, I am delightful. That's what he's with on this one.
Right.
EG can't even get my country right. It's not a delight.
You can't get your country. It's not my fault you don't know where you live.
Like last week, he insulted me by asking about cookies done enough in my country, and and then he's like, "Oh, you know,
How's
you're
that
the
an
closest
insult?
thing."
Yeah. There's overlap there. It's not the first time that we've asked you questions about Germany or whatever, you know, so.
I was
Like,
going to say, you
you're-
are the
you're a
closest
touch
person to
closer.
all of these
Yeah.
regions. What do you want from me? Who is
Right.
going to know?
Like-
Justin? No.
Right. If you got questions about Mexico or Canada, who are you going to ask? You going to ask your roommate? Or are you going to ask the people that like share a border with that country? Like, I think that's fair.
That's
So-
fair, but he was like, implying that I should like. Obviously, this happens in your country
No,
too.
I wasn't implying. I was outright stating you should know this information. There was no implication there. This was a you should know this, and you are a big disappointment for not helping.
This is what you get if you join our Patreon and our Discord. is we argue about cookies.
We do that.
I mean,
Sometimes.
that was fairly mild, all things considered. I think you and I tried to like help Google
Yeah.
it, and then it was like just no. Like,
I
oh,
want to
okay,
know what
thanks,
these things
thanks
are.
for elaborating
White
there.
chocolates,
Like,
did it make cookies? I'm very
I know,
curious.
right?
I was very specific
Star-shaped.
about what these things were, and nobody
And-
came up
and
with the white chocolate bit. They just came with like star cookies.
They had
Well,
white
you
frosting. I
provide
think
a
that's as
link.
close as we could get.
If I
So-
could provide a link, I wouldn't have asked a question. This wouldn't have been an issue.
Who is telling you about these cookies?
It was somebody else in another server, and I was just like, "Hey, I know a guy from Finland, so maybe he'll know."
You made me throw Mr. Toadstool. Well, you're
I didn't make you do anything. You have free will, allegedly.
allegedly.
TM.
Are you one of those where we're all like quantumly destined to do things and we have no free will? Is
No,
that
I
why?
mean, like I could choose to eat eggs, but at the same time, that choice is based on the fact of have I had eggs recently? Do I want eggs? So it's all like,
Do you have a palate genetically that allows you to enjoy eggs? Like it could also
Everybody
like,
does,
never
right?
enjoy
well, it's
something.
like lactose intolerant people who still want to eat cake, but then they don't take a lactate pill because why wouldn't you do that then? Why do you hate yourself?
They have
I'm
some
saying
people
that
they
for
have
a
to
very
punish themselves for.
non-specific reason, of course. It's not like I know anybody who does that.
I'm from Northern Europe. We're like 99% love lactose and 1% lactose intolerant or something. I don't think I know anyone who's lactose intolerant.
Yeah. In the States, it's probably not super common either, but it's trendy for some reason. So you run into that
It's
too.
actually, I
you
think
know,
it's
like-
more common. I saw an article that it's like a decent amount of people in the world. I don't know that it was as high as 30% have some level of lactose intolerance, but like a decent
Sure.
amount of people do.
The East is
apparently.
very lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
Northern Europe is where we're least lactose intolerant because we have a very dairy-based diet.
Well, yeah, it's either that or snow. What the fuck else are you gonna eat?
So the further
All-
away you get from Northern Europe, the higher incidence of lactose intolerance there is.
Yeah.
But
Well, and some of that is just, because adults, like adult mammals don't tend to need milk. So it's, it really is more of a children's thing. But
I think it's partly genetic and partly, I think almost anyone will get lactose intolerant if they don't consistently get dairy. Is
Sure.
my understanding.
yeah.
Well, it's like the people who are either from Wisconsin or Switzerland that are lactose intolerant. It's like, well, you might as well just kill yourself because what the fuck else are you gonna do?
I lived in
that's-
Wisconsin and
that's
I hated
mother country,
cheese.
right?
It was a mild hell.
Yeah.
Well, because it's like what else? There's nothing else to eat and there's nothing to do, so you're done
That's where the Butterburger's from, though, right?
if you
Oh.
say so.
That's like a famous Wisconsin thing. I think I've made it
So
once.
you
It was
say.
delicious.
Okay.
See, I know more about your country than you do because I know.
First
the
of all, it's
Butterburger.
Wisconsin. It's barely the country.
Yeah.
The only place like less accessible and worthwhile than Wisconsin is right above it, or just about above it in Montana. I mean, there's fucking nothing. There's even less to do there and less to eat.
Montana's more interesting than say perhaps the Dakotas, but then like I completely forget that Upper Michigan really is a thing.
Well, what's that joke? Do we really need 2 Dakotas? And the answer is no, we really don't.
There's another fun food fact about America is poke bowls are American.
Yes, they're
Not-
Hawaiian.
They're Hawaiian. Yeah.
I know. Because there's 1 2 blocks from my work and I eat it weekly. It's a good meal. Okay, so we're done.
One
And-
book in an hour. It's impressive.
well, we knew changes was going to be along the
Yeah.
run.
And
We
there
actually
was
did
more we
pretty,
can
pretty
talk
like
through.
pretty on Dresden, except the last 5 minutes.
And the first,
the first-
5 minutes.
Yeah.
The first 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
50 minutes of Dresden stuff, 10 minutes of bullshit. That's not bad.
Woo! That's a good ratio for us. Normally, it's a lot closer.
Yeah, and you can get all the bullshit you want if you support our Patreon and get on our Discord. I
And
think
do
we'll
it.
argue about
definitely need
cookies and countries and food. It's a lot of
Do it,
food arguing.
cowards. Sign up.
And next week we're doing our end of year Secret Santa. Hopefully everyone actually received something this year.
Someone
hopefully.
gave me a gift, so I'm good to go. I don't care about the rest of you.
One person will probably
We already
won't
gave you a
get-
gift last week when you talked about the Muppet Christmas Carol.
This is a physical gift that I can take with me and lord over people.
That's his gift. We'll just let EG set the theme every year just to make sure he gets a present.
Yeah.
Fuck it, I'm down.
Yeah.
Next
Oh,
year
yeah.
is Turbo Man. We're watching
Right,
Jingle
next-
All the Way.
Next week, January 7th, we'll do Christmas. The one that matters, the one that's fun for us.
The
So
one where
check
we
that
actually
out.
benefit.
Yeah.